Hello. Hello, welcome. Hi, welcome to a Headstrong live stream. Welcome to our Headstrong live stream about feeling low and just low mood and understanding a bit more about negative moods and maybe how we can shift them as well. It's nice to see you all, whether you're here live, whether you're here in the future, somewhere else, tuning in after the fact. It's great to have you here and thank you so much for joining us. So before we get on and start thinking about feeling low and how we can maybe shift a negative mood, it'd probably be really great if we introduced ourselves. So hi, I'm Robson. I am a part of the team at Headstrong, and I'm also the manager for Illumina, and I kind of manage the Illumina project, which sits under Headstrong in the wider organization of Youthscape, which you might see just jotted up in the top right corner of the screen as well. I'm also a youth worker. I've been working in youth work for a long time, a long-term psychology student, and it's just great to be here with you all today. And Kate, why don't you introduce yourself first?
Hey everyone. Yeah, it's exciting to think of everyone joining us right now. And I love the idea there are people like Back from the Future. It's like a Back to the Future link. Anyway, I'm Kate. Hey everyone. I'm a psychologist and I'm one of the directors of a national organization called the Mind and Soul Foundation. We're really passionate about everything to do with what it means to feel well, even in tough times. And you might recognize my face, some of you, because I was one of the original team when we launched Headstrong way back in 2020, wasn't it? Feels a long time ago now. But so I might look a little bit familiar.
Yeah. So what is Headstrong? Well, Headstrong is an online project that exists around social media and on its own website and supports young people's kind of mental, emotional well-being. And as Kate said, they were part of the team and they're still here and working with us. And I've also recently joined that team. And it's just great to kind of connect the two different worlds of Illumina and Mind and Soul into that space and be here tonight for this Headstrong live stream. You can find Headstrong on Instagram and TikTok. And just find loads of resources and tools from there as well. And then Illumina, the project that I sit in specifically, that is a project that you can find at selfharm.co.uk. And we work just to try and help support young people who are struggling with self-harm in some way and help them consider recovery. And so that just gives you a heads up of all of our different organizations and who we are. But it's great to have you all here today. Thank you all so much for joining us or tuning in for this session afterwards. So we're going to start, I guess, by jumping into kind of thinking a bit more about feeling low and our emotions more generally. So I figured it was great to just start by saying the massive question for me and Kate of well, what are emotions? And I don't know if Kate would agree, but I feel like it's quite a complex answer and it's not something that everyone's necessarily agreed on. I don't know. Do you feel the same as me, Kate, on that?
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? If you think, what is an emotion? We all know when we're feeling one, particularly if it's a rubbish one. But to try and put your finger on what it is, that's quite hard. I love the wheel that we've got up on the screen here that just helps you try and put a name to what you're feeling, because it's not always easy, is it?
It really isn't. And it does show us just how many different emotions there kind of are as well, doesn't it? And all the different ways we could feel an emotion. But I thought I'd start by just coming with a really basic definition of what people seem to have agreed is an emotion. And they say that it's a complex reaction pattern of many different elements, like biological, psychological, physiological, by which an individual tries to deal with a significant situation or tries to deal with something that they're facing. And that how we feel that, what that feeling is, I guess, what word we would call it, depends on how we interact with that situation and on all of those different elements. And so as we start thinking about, well, what is low mood and what is this idea of feeling low and feeling sad, I thought it was great just to highlight that actually there's so many emotions that we're considering here, and these sit within a wider span. And actually it's completely normal to feel so many of these emotions in different situations and at different times, even the negative ones sometimes. And I thought it was really important that we highlighted that.
But then I guess it's good to remember, isn't it, that they have a function, especially when we feel emotions that just feel really rubbish, or we think we'd be doing a lot better at what we're trying to deal with if we weren't feeling what we were feeling. But to remember that emotions have a purpose, so we experience them, but also it's part of your brain trying to help you deal with something. But it changes the way that you respond in your mind and your body, but also it grabs your attention and lets you know that something significant is going on.
Yeah, exactly. It's so useful and so important. And in situations where we might feel low or we might feel sad or some of those different words, as you can see, there's loads of them in that kind of purple part of the feelings wheel. That might be in response to situations that are sad, or that we do feel maybe lost or hurt in some way. So they are really just a way that we're trying to process a situation that brings them up a little bit. And when we do feel things like that, they probably help us realize that we might need a bit of support, or that we might need a bit of time to process that feeling, and that feeling will pass. But actually, right now, we just need to take a bit of time with that. And so they are really, it's okay that they teach us these things. But Kate, you made a really good point the other day of how can we recognize when actually some of these emotions might be more, or when they're maybe like lasting a bit longer. Like, how can we tell when they're getting a bit more significant in some way?
Yeah, because there's two times when emotions cause us problems, isn't there? There's the time when they're just really nasty or inconvenient, or they're not what we need to be feeling to get on with what we're doing. So you want to be feeling really confident, but then you're actually feeling really anxious, or you want to be feeling really happy, but you're just struggling with feeling low and flat or something like that. But the other thing is when they just drag on or they get bigger. And there's a point when what we're talking about today, a low mood, becomes something that's a bit more serious, when you might need some help with dealing with that. So we're going to talk really practical this evening about how do you manage with some of those tricky feelings when your mood gets stuck in the sort of swamp zone where you're just feeling really rubbish and low and you need to shift yourself out of it. But sometimes those low moods, those low feelings can be a sign that something more serious is going on. So we're thinking about how big, how serious are the things that we're feeling? How long has it been going on for? You know, there's a difference between just thinking, man, I'm having a really flat day, or this week's feeling really rubbish, or the last couple of days I've just found it really hard to shift this feeling. That's different to thinking, actually, it's been weeks, it's been months, maybe, when you've been feeling low. And then the third thing is just thinking about impact. Once our feelings and our moods start to affect other stuff, so we're struggling with school, or we're just not enjoying stuff anymore, we've stopped doing things we used to do, maybe we're struggling with eating or sleeping, or it's making us do something else that we know isn't going to help us in the long run, those are all signs that maybe something more significant's going on. And the stuff we're talking about tonight will help, but maybe there's some other things that you need to do as well to get some good support.
Yeah, maybe tonight could be a first step to figuring out what's next, what other support might we need when that kind of thing happens. That's great. And as you can
because sometimes these things do just linger, don't they? And that's normal. Like, sometimes a season that we're going through is tricky and it's challenging, and that's not going to go away. And part of life is learning how to hold our moods and our feelings and tricky emotions in those seasons. Like, maybe some people watching are in the middle of exams right now. That's such a good example. This is not going to be the best couple of weeks of your life if you're stuck in summer exams right now. Maybe you've got something else going on at home. Maybe you've got parents who are splitting up, or a tricky situation. You've got worries in your mind. Sometimes these moods just last longer. And of course, like it says on the slide, when you're in those teenage years, because of the way that your brain is developing, your emotions change. They're more easily triggered. They flare up really quickly with what can feel like something quite small, really throws your mood, and it can be much harder to get out of those emotional swamps once you start to feel really stuck in them. And of course, sometimes life is just complicated. And again, teenage years, there's a lot going on. Like we said, exams, friendships, home stuff. Sometimes there's just things going on around you that are triggering difficult feelings over longer seasons. And in those times, it's really good to remember that you're not completely at the mercy of your own feelings. Sometimes it feels like you're just on a boat in the middle of the sea, and these waves of emotion crash over you, and there's nothing you can do. And what we're going to talk about this evening is some things you can do to try and feel like you can get back in control and try and help yourself feel better.
Absolutely. Yeah, so how can we understand why we might feel low then? It's a big question again. And I think for me, one of the points on the last slide that really hits home for that is that sometimes we can have these negative experiences, and they can start to build mindsets, or they can start to build certain patterns or certain thoughts that just keep coming back. And that can actually keep us stuck in some of those places, can't it? That can keep us really just held there and help keep those feelings lingering, maybe because it's bringing back thoughts from the past, or bringing back certain mindsets that we're struggling with. And actually that those that bring those feelings again with them every single time. And that's just one way that we might begin to understand why we feel low, or why we feel like it's lingering, why we feel like it's sticking a little bit. But of course, as well, there's loads of debate over the causes of this. There's loads of debate and different researchers looking at different things around why we might feel low, whether it's looking at the genetics or situations and how events impact us, or looking at our physiology and how our brains actually exist and how they feel, and how that might impact us. And I think, I don't know if you'd agree, Kate, but I think overall the big message is that it's maybe a mixture of all of this. It's probably a mixture of how the world shapes our brain, and actually how we deal with situations as well. What do
Yeah,
you think? Something you'd
definitely.
add there?
Yeah, I mean, an emotion is your brain's way of grabbing your attention to tell you something significant is going on. So that could be something in the present, something you need to pay attention to, or your brain just wants you to know this matters. So it matters because, and your brain kind of makes you feel rubbish so that you know it's important to you. And that's painful and difficult, but it is important that you're aware of stuff that's going on around you. But sometimes it can be something else, like you say. Maybe there's a rule that you're living by, a standard you're trying to live up to, a way you're trying to do life, or something you've come to believe about the world. And that means your brain's going to trigger those emotions more often, because it's having to warn you that you're going to break that rule or not meet that standard, or that thing is at risk of going wrong. So sometimes we get caught in patterns of the way that we're living, or things that we've experienced in life that make us feel rubbish. And sometimes, of course, it's nothing to do with the moment we're in now. Sometimes what we're feeling is what I call an echo emotion. It's because something in the present has really reminded your memory and your mind of something that happened in the past that was really difficult. And so sometimes somebody says something to us now and it triggers an emotion that's actually much bigger than it sort of should be in the moment. And that's because it's coming from something else that maybe we need to work through and understand better. So that's why what we're talking about is this balance of the things we'll share tonight. What can you do in the moment just to lift your mood and help yourself feel better? But sometimes there's some other work to do as well to understand where these feelings are coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, I think the best way to think about this idea of those echo feelings, or the idea that we're kind of coming back to these situations again and again, is to think of it like this spiral. That actually sometimes we can get really stuck ruminating on certain mindsets, or feeling certain feelings coming back up and having them triggered. And sometimes actually it can feed itself then. And we'll talk a bit about that when we think about what steps we can do and how we can try and change some of this. Actually, we can get stuck in this spiral. And the big thing for us then is, well, what can we do? What can that first step be that helps us stop that spiral, or helps us break that spiral in some way? Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? Because sometimes something happens and it's not even that big a bad thing, but it pushes you into the top of that spiral. And maybe you were feeling a bit rubbish already. You were a bit tired or a bit hungry, or your hormones are a bit funny, particularly for the girls watching. Or something else was already going on that was making you feel a bit vulnerable. And so you just start to go down, and then you start to think, well, this is really rubbish. Things are always rubbish, aren't they? One of the tricks your mind plays on you is that when you're experiencing an emotion, it becomes much easier to remember the other times you felt the same feeling. It's kind of a rubbish trick, because when you're feeling low anyway, then you start to feel like all the memories you can draw to the front of your mind are other times you felt that rubbish. So you start thinking, well, I just always feel like this. This is terrible. Just like my whole life is a disaster. And then you start to spiral further and further down. And once you've started, it's like going down the helter-skelter at the fun fair. It's really hard to stop once you've started. So it's good to think about, like, how can we care for ourselves? How can we try and stop ourselves getting into that space? Can we recognize that we're in the space where we might be vulnerable to starting to slide down that slope, and try and avoid getting pushed lower and lower down it?
Absolutely. And yeah, I think Kate hit on this point perfectly, that maybe one of the first things we should be thinking about, and one of the things we should be trying to think about before that spiral even begins, is actually, can we begin to balance some of the key things? And there's so much research around just how much impact our sleep can have on how we feel, or on depression and feelings of low mood. And actually, there's so much important work in getting good rhythms of sleep, getting good sleep patterns, and actually just how different we can feel by being able to build some of those things in. And again, that's the idea of balance, isn't it? It's about trying to just figure out how can we get the best out of these different things. Again, with diet, we can have so many like impacts from the certain nutrients and vitamins that we need to get, and that actually really benefit us. And that can really help us when we're struggling or when we're beginning to feel sort of these lingering low mood. But actually, that's also the time, it's one of the hardest times to reach for some of that stuff, isn't it? And I think it's worth recognizing that actually that diet can kind of feed the spiral itself, because if we aren't able to access those things, that can lead to us maybe feeling fatigued. It can maybe leave us feeling a bit drained. And that in itself can feed the spiral a bit more, can't it? And really continue it going down. Yeah. I guess as well, it's just worth pointing out, we've got exercise on there. And I'd take that further. I'd take that to like being outside and just getting out a little bit more. There's so much good benefit of being out in fresh air or nature, or just getting that bit of sunlight for us, actually, when we think about our mood and we think about maybe those lingering feelings of low mood. It's also really important to just try and build in some of that exercise in some way. And we'll come back to that point later. But yeah, is there anything else you'd add about balancing, Kate?
Yeah, I think it is about balance, isn't it? Because it's really easy with all of those three things to actually start to get a bit obsessed about it, or just feeling really rubbish. I don't know about you, but when you've had a really rubbish night's sleep, you then start, it's easy, that can push you into the spiral, can't it? Because you think, well, that's it now. I've had a rubbish night's sleep, so I've failed at that before I've even started the day, and now the whole day is going to be rubbish. And actually, it's more about overall rhythms and patterns, and just thinking, what does the structure of my life look like? And are there overall things, like we all have nights where we don't sleep well, or days where we don't eat well. I'm sitting here, look, with chocolate cookie next to me, which I had for my dinner before coming on this. We all have those moments. We can't be pushing ourselves to try and do everything perfect all the time. But thinking is, what's the pattern here? Am I feeling really flat? Am I struggling with energy? Am I feeling like my blood sugar's up and down and up and down, and it's really affecting my mood? Could I change something? And instead of attacking ourselves and thinking, well, I'm rubbish at, here's the things I'm doing really badly at today, instead thinking, actually, is there something I could swap in, something more positive? So instead of just thinking, oh, my diet's really rubbish, I'm such an idiot, thinking, actually, I'm going to try and eat 2 pieces of fruit each day this week, and I'm going to see how that changes stuff. Or I'm going to swap out like my energy drink that I have mid-morning, and I'm going to have like a smoothie or something a bit more healthy instead, and just seeing what makes a difference and trying to swap in some positive changes. So instead of trying to nitpick at ourselves, which is easy to do, particularly if you're feeling low, trying to think, what's some positive stuff I could put in instead, just to try and get the balance better in the way that I'm doing life.
Absolutely. That's such a good point. That's so important. So the question then is, we've talked so much about just what's going on, or what it might be that's in the background here. The question is, what can we do? What can we maybe do to change that feeling or to lift our mood in some way? And we think we've got about 5 key ideas here that you could be able to take away. Yeah,
because this is the most important thing. One of the toughest things when you're feeling low, particularly if you feel like you've got stuck in it, is the way that you start to feel like you've lost control. And particularly in your teenage years, because emotions can feel a bit random. One minute you're feeling fine, the next minute something tiny happens, or maybe you don't even know why, and you just suddenly think, man, I feel really low and rubbish and flat. And you just think, well, there's nothing I can do with this. It just happens. And that feeling is probably the worst thing about when your emotions aren't doing what you want them to do. It's just feeling like there's nothing you can change. So we have got 5 things that you can do if you're feeling low. Maybe that's because life has dealt you some tough stuff recently, or maybe it's just one of those random moments and you don't really know why. But here's 5 things that you can do. So number 1, we're thinking in general for all of these 5 about taking control, but I want to just start by thinking about, how does control affect us as humans? Because it's a really interesting thing about the way the human mind works. works. If we start to feel like we're out of control in general, we know that makes us feel worse. The human mind is designed to need to feel like it's able to influence stuff. We are able to influence stuff in the world around us. We're able to make a difference. We're able to make positive changes. If something mad happens, we're probably going to be able to cope with it. We're going to be able to manage it. So when things in general start to feel out of control, we tend to start to feel anxious, sad, low, all of those feelings, because it's not our sort of natural state to be. It's not the best place for our minds to be. So anything that you can do that helps you start to feel like you're restoring a sense of control or order, that will always help. It won't change the big global whatever it is that you're dealing with. It won't make exams go away or stop the friendship troubles that you're having or whatever it is, but it will lift your mood. And what's interesting is on some days, that's the difference between you just not feeling like you can do anything at all because you just feel so flat you can't get out of bed. That little lift that restoring a bit of control will give you can be enough that you then think, okay, well, actually, maybe I can like text a mate or go take a shower or go for a walk or some of the other bigger things that we're going to talk about later. So restoring a sense of control or order in your world, feeling like you've made a positive change. So let's think about what sort of things that could be. So it could be, this may not be what everybody's wanting to hear as a solution to feeling rubbish. Tidying something. I know it's just exactly what everybody's nagging you to do, but if your space that you're in is in complete chaos, it will actually make you feel worse. So is there something little you could do? Could you pick some stuff up? Could you clear a bit of floor? Could you sort out a desk or a drawer or pare your socks off or stick all the dirty laundry in a bag or something like that? Something that's about restoring that bit of order. Or maybe you don't really want to do tidying, you want to do something that's a bit more fun. There are some activities you can do that use this desire that your mind has for order. So I don't know about you, Robson. Are you a puzzle guy? I personally cannot stand puzzles. I think they would push me over an edge, but a lot of people love them. And that's because of that sense of restoring order. What I do like, though, is Lego. I like Lego. So building Lego, building blocks. Some people like to do things like craft and stuff like that because it's got that same sense of just achieving something, getting somewhere with something. Or really anything that you enjoy doing, just grabbing a moment to do it and do it really well. You know, those seasons in life where you just feel like you're failing at everything because you never get to do anything properly. Just thinking, right, I'm going to go out, I'm going to go for a run and I'm going to do it really properly. I'm going to finish my favorite route or whatever it is that you like to do. That sense of restoring order and control will definitely help.
Absolutely. And I really loved that idea you had about tidying, just because you made a point that maybe other people are telling us to do it. But actually, by choosing to do it ourselves, we're also taking control of that as well, aren't we? Because we're saying, you know what, I'm not doing it because you're telling me to do it. I'm taking the control and saying, I'm choosing to do this activity right now. And that's so great as well.
Yeah. And what we're doing as well is we're releasing the sort of happy hormones and the chemicals in our mind that actually do help us to feel better anyway. And, you know, in the moments when you're feeling rubbish, some of these chemicals, they are your friends. Like I say, they might not solve the big picture, but when you just need to feel a lift, doing something that triggers some of these things will really help.
Yeah, or if they're the first step you take that, like Kate said, helps you take the bigger steps, helps you do the bigger tasks for the day, then actually they really might be that big difference for you, that mood changer. And yeah, just like Kate was saying, there's things like completing tasks and those kind of ideas of reward and succeeding at something that can release something like dopamine. And actually that is such a big change for us. That can really boost us. That can help us feel like we've succeeded at something, give us that positive glow. And equal to that, sometimes, I don't know about you, Kate, I'm a massive to-do list kind of person. And sometimes just celebrating those victories or celebrating the little victories we have can also give us that boost. So actually being able to cross that thing off the to-do list after you've done it, not only did we get it from completing it, but also just from being able to celebrate it a little bit. And then similar to that, we've also got something like serotonin. And serotonin is kind of, we've called it here like a mood stabilizer. It's doing a lot for us, but we can really release that from a lot of aerobic things. So things like cycling and swimming and running and going for a walk, things that have quite a good rhythm to them, a good balance to them, they can really help us release some of that serotonin. Equally, things like meditation and being in nature are also related to that. And so that's why they're so commonly talked about when we're thinking about balancing our moods or trying to process difficult moods. And I guess as well, the other key one here would be what oxytocin, which is all about connecting with other people and feeling connected with others. And actually, if we're able to just spend time playing with a pet, playing with a younger sibling or a cousin or a niece or nephew, or just like spending time with people, maybe holding their hand, maybe getting a hug from someone or giving a compliment or getting a compliment. Again, those can just release that little boost in some way, that little bit of oxytocin that help us feel connected, help us feel part of something a bit bigger. And actually, that can be a really big first step as well.
Yeah, what I love about all of these as well is that they are little steps, little things, but they're so often like happy hacks that we easily miss out on. Like one of my favorite facts there is you've got like giving someone a hug gives you an oxytocin reward, which is true. But did you know that to get the full like benefit of that, you have to hug for about like 10 seconds? Which next time you hug someone, like have a count. It's longer than you think. And quite often, even if we were going to, like you've seen a mate, you quick hug and then you move on, like we miss those opportunities. So sometimes we need to realize that there's the chance here for something that might really help. Like linger in a hug for a bit. I mean, check that the other person's up for that first. Obviously, we don't want it to be awkward. But some of these things, they're simple things that we can do that really will help us.
Yeah. Absolutely. And on the same line, that idea of giving a compliment, if we could start our day by actually just texting a friend, saying something good to them, celebrating them a little bit, maybe that's a great way to kickstart our mood as well. And it's probably uplifted them that little bit, hasn't it?
Yeah, and smiling, chatting to strangers, little things like that. If you're stuck in a queue waiting at the cash point or at the bus stop or something, these little things can change not just your day, but someone else's as well. And actually, that's a great lead into the next one, isn't it? Connecting with others.
Absolutely, that was perfect. So yeah, just we wanted to highlight, as we've been saying, just the importance of actually being able to connect with other people. And that idea of the spiral. This is probably going to come up a lot in this part, but actually the idea of the spiral means that sometimes it can pull us away from doing things that we already enjoy, or it can pull us away from choosing to do things like this. It might lead to us actually, if these feelings are lingering, to us feeling like we shouldn't be around other people, or that other people don't want us to be around them. But actually, there's so much research and there's so much benefit to just being with other people, and just being able to be around other people, whether that's that we're around people who are full of energy and positive, and actually just that kind of laugh just starts to rub off on us a little bit, or that positivity just starts to uplift us in that moment. And that small change again can mean so much for us later on in the day. Or if it's just being present with those people, there's so much work just around how beneficial being with other people, just being sat with them, even if we're not able to engage in the same way, even if we're fatigued or we're drained and we're just struggling to engage fully, actually just being with those people and knowing that they're supportive, knowing that they want us there and that they're welcoming us, those can really have a big impact on us, can't they?
Yeah, and the most valuable thing, of course, is that sense. It's another key need that we have as human beings. We need to feel like we belong somewhere, like there's somewhere where we really connect with other people who get us and they know us and they love us and they accept us and they value us. So it's finding who are those people, like who are your anchor people, the really solid people in your life who like you do anything for them, they do anything for you, and you can just hang out with them. And I love what you've said there, because sometimes we think connecting with others like, oh my gosh, I'm so exhausted. And I don't really feel very bubbly. I'm not great company, just not now. But these are about the people you don't have to put on a show for. They're the people you can just sit with or just send a text out to. And it's like that ping, you've made that connection and it just lifts your mood. And when you're with those people, you can do things just in the same space. And you'll feel that sense of connection, even though you might not be having the most animated, chatty conversations. So you could just sit and watch a movie or that old box set you've seen a million times, or just sit and be together. And there's still that sense of connection because that's just the sort of friendship or relationship that you have. Those are good people to be around.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah.
So this one is all about like changing our perspectives and just trying to think of it. Is there another way we can look at situations or things? This is a bit different to some of the other ones, I guess, so far, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, isn't it? This is about trying to think more about where have we got to, how have we got to here, and is there something that we can reflect on that's helpful, and putting some time into that, and then actually thinking, okay, now enough. Because sometimes what can happen when we're in a period of low mood is that we get stuck in something called rumination, which is basically when your mind starts to go over and over and over the same thing again and again, and you're just getting nowhere. You're worrying about it, you're obsessing over it, or you're just rethinking the same territory the whole time. So sometimes it's about thinking, right, this thing that's happened, is there something that I need to do? Maybe an action that I need to take? Is there something that I could do to make a change here, or to think, how am I going to do something positive about this tomorrow? Is there something I need to understand or learn from it? Sometimes our mind is bringing things to the surface all the time because it wants us to learn something. There's an important thing that we need to pick up here. So just giving ourselves that headspace to ponder that. And doing some of that thinking, and that might just be you, or it might be you talking to a friend, one of those people that we've just talked about, or maybe even sometimes in a therapeutic space. That's why those spaces can be so valuable, because you've got somewhere regular that you can take these things and say, there was this thing that happened and it's really stuck in my head and it's making me feel really rubbish. And someone else will help you do that, reflecting and thinking about what it is that's happened and whether there's anything you need to take from it. But the really key thing is just putting a limit around that. Like literally sometimes thinking, right, I'm going to sit and I'm going to do like 20 minutes just thinking about this. I'm going to get my piece of paper or my journal or whatever it is, and I'm going to write some notes and thoughts down, or I'm going to give this person a call or go and have that coffee with someone. And then when it's done, and I'm going to move on. And then what it's about is, can you lift your mind away? What are the things that help you forget and distract you, but also things that might move your mind to something else? So there's this amazing thing called AWE, that's AWE, not or as in either or, but or as, and it's what we feel when we see something that's bigger than ourselves. So, like you go and you see an amazing sunset, or you walk up to the top of a hill if you're lucky enough to live near one and you see a great view, or just you go out at night and you look at the stars. If you've got that like app on your phone where you can hold it up and it tells you the names of all the stars. I got that not so long ago, and just going out and thinking, wow, that's crazy. That's like Mars over there. That's like a planet. That's awe, because it's completely changed your perspective. We know that awe is this amazing, it's another emotion actually, but what this one does is it makes us feel, it lifts your mood, it changes your physiology in your body, it helps you feel more relaxed, it decreases anxiety and stress. It's all good. So when we're feeling low, sometimes what we need to do is shift our perspective and try and experience some awe. So you can get yourself somewhere you can see the sky. That's the simplest way. Or if you do have a great view near you or something, you could do that. But the other thing you can do for awe is anything that makes you feel part of something bigger. So things like playing in a football team, joining a choir or an orchestra, something that just reminds you that there's a bigger picture here. It kind of lifts your eyes away from your stuff to bigger stuff going on, and helps you not to feel so caught up in the problems that you're struggling with.
I love that. That's great. Yeah, I think there's a couple of pieces of music that if I put them on with like surround headphones and I just close my eyes, they can just give me that feeling a little bit.
Music is great for that, isn't it? Yeah, that's another really good one. Music. Yeah,
you were just bringing back so many different like memories of those particular songs. It was great. Brilliant.
Everyone has a favorite happy song. I feel like we've missed that in all of this. It's really true, isn't it? Music's such a powerful thing to change our mood, but it's a really tricky thing. I feel like this is a whole sideline here, because sometimes when you're in a low mood, it's good to choose music that kind of matches your mood. It helps you understand why you're feeling what you're feeling. And there's something really good. You know what we were just talking about? Sometimes you have a period of thinking about and reflecting on what it is that you're feeling rubbish about. But then there's a moment to pick yourself up and think, right, come on, now I need to lift my mood. I've got to get on. I need to do something to get myself out of this. And so music can do both those things, because sometimes it can help us reflect and linger and connect with our feelings. But then sometimes it helps us to feel better too. And I definitely have a couple of classic happy songs that in the moments where I know, like, come on, Kate, I've just got to get out of this mood now, I'll put them on and quite often go off and get out and get some fresh air, or go and find some ore views or whatever it is. And it really helps.
I love that. That's amazing. Great. So the next point we wanted to make was just that idea of choosing to be active. And I felt like the word choosing here was really important, because again, when we're stuck in that spiral, or we feel like we're starting to like just be part of, like, feel these same things for longer, or if they keep coming back, sometimes it does have to be a choice, doesn't it? It really does have to be a choice to step away from it, or to choose to do something that we're maybe losing. And actually, in that spiral, if we have like just stopped doing something once, that can sometimes make it really harder to go back to go and try and do it again, or to go and pick up that activity or that thing that we enjoy again. And so I wanted to encourage us that one of the things we could do was to choose to be active. Could we choose to go back to that thing that we enjoy? Could we choose to go and do that little bit of exercise, or go on that small walk and just begin to do that? And for me, one of the easiest ways of kind of challenging myself to do that was through something called the 5 minutes kind of activity. Just like saying to myself, like, you're going to go do this for 5 minutes now. And that's such a small commitment for me. But I wanted to be present in how I felt before and how I felt after. And actually, just by doing that, by challenging myself to do 5 minutes, by saying, like, let's just give this a go, it just can have so much of an impact. And over time, you can realize that actually it feels that little bit easier, or our mood feels that little bit better afterwards, after a few days of that challenge. And I tried that myself this morning. I woke up early and I said, you know what, instead of sitting here on my phone, I'm just going to try and get out the house. I'm going to go for that morning walk that I've been thinking would be nice, because it's not too hot yet and it's still quite bright. And I just threw myself into that a little bit. And so it is just that continual challenge, I guess, and that continual choice of trying to do that.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? And again, I think one of the hardest things when you're feeling low is when you get to the point you just don't feel like doing anything.
Yes.
And starting to realize that actually pushing yourself out of that is the only way out of it. That really helps you to feel then less at the mercy of those low emotions. So it really does help, not just in that moment. It helps you feel more in control all the rest of the time. But our society is so extreme on everything. So you can feel, like you say, if you're going to go for a walk, well, you can't just go for a walk. You've got to train for a marathon, or you can't just like go and have a potter around the neighborhood. No, you've got to go on a proper hike or something. No. So just think, what's the smallest version of this that I could do? How can I take the pressure off? You don't have to measure it. You don't have to time yourself. You don't have to be on Strava. You don't have to produce something amazing. Just doing something really small that might help you feel a bit better. That is a big enough win. And all the things we've been talking about, whether that's something that restores a bit of order, whether that's reaching out to someone, whether it's trying to grab a moment of awe, whether it's exercise to trigger some endorphins, just starting to trial some of those things can be really helpful. And I often encourage people to, sometime when they're not feeling low and rubbish, but if you know that this is something you struggle with, try and brainstorm a list of things that you could do, or you could even put them on little slips of paper and then put all the slips in a jar. And then in the moment when you've hit that low mood, you can pick one or reach into the jar and pull one out, and maybe pull two out and let yourself choose one of the two, because otherwise you're going to pull one and think, oh, I really don't want to do that. So make yourself a rule. I'm going to pick two and I'm definitely going to try one. But just starting to think, can we get ourselves out of doing nothing into a space where we're doing something? Like, if you think about how do you change the direction of something, it's really hard to change the direction it's not moving at all. Sometimes you have to give it a prod, like a ball rolling, and then once it's rolling, you can tweak the direction a bit. And sometimes we have to do that with ourselves. We have to just get ourselves going a bit first. And once you started doing something, you might think, I've walked for 5 minutes. I'm a bit bored now, but I actually do feel like going down the coffee shop, or now I feel like maybe I'll give that mate a text, or whatever it is. So once you've got yourself started, you might feel that helps you to move into something else.
I love that. That's great. And the last
one. And the last thing, well, this is really important, because when we talk about low mood and sadness and depression, anxiety and all this stuff, we spend so much time talking about the things that we don't want, and we forget sometimes to talk about the thing that we do want, which is the good stuff, like happiness or joy or celebration, fun, excitement, all of those things. And the thing is, sometimes life just doesn't have a lot of those in it. Like maybe you're in a season where everything just feels quite grim or boring or pressured or anxiety triggering. And sometimes life has seasons like that. And one of the most important skills for learning to get through life's tough times is actually, do you know what stuff brings you joy? What makes your heart sing? What makes you smile? What makes you laugh? What are those things, and how can you build them in, even or in particular in the times when there's other stuff going on that might be more difficult? So I'll tell you one of mine. So I love to bike. I'm a bit of a mad cyclist. I know some of you are like, that would make me feel a lot worse, but I love it. Okay. But if I'm feeling really low, I will cycle. There's a route I know where there's the top of quite a high hill, and it's a nice safe road, so I can do this. And it's not the going up it that's fun. That's probably why lots of people don't like cycling. But when I get to the top, the best bit is going down, because I don't care what else is going on in your life, but when you're like whee down a really big hill, it just makes you feel better. It always makes me smile. And something about that particular hill, there's quite often birds that will kind of like fly alongside you, like they're on for the ride, and it always cheers me up no matter what else is going on. So that's a good one. What are some of yours?
I think for me, it's trying to like engage or re-engage in some of the things I really enjoy. So for me, like I love writing poetry, but it just, even though it's literally just a book, it feels so big sometimes to pick it up and open it. And so it is that kind of like, okay, I'm just going to go and write for 20 minutes, just give it a go, see what comes out. And usually it's those moments that I'm seeking the feeling rather than trying to succeed. Which again comes back to that idea of changing our mindset. That
sometimes we forget, don't we? Yeah, it's like because I've got a daughter who's just finished exams. She's just finished her A-levels, and when you've been like studying really hard and you come at them, you've been waiting for so long to finish, but it can feel like a real anticlimax, because then you're just like, man, what did I do before I was doing all this studying? And you just can't remember, and you have to like remind yourself what stuff is fun, what's the things that you do just to relax, to hang out, to connect with people, to make yourself smile. So sometimes we have to practice having fun, and that sounds really weird. Actually, it's interesting because we've been in a season where we've all had to do that, coming out of lockdowns and pandemic. And I think a lot of people are still in that space where there's perhaps things that you used to do, in the life before, but you've still not gone back to doing since. So maybe there's something you've not done that you used to love, like going to the cinema, going for a swim. I don't know what it might be. But sometimes we have to get back into the habit. And as you say, Robson, practice stuff that we used to enjoy, and see if we can remind ourselves why it's fun. And if not, find new things that are fun.
Absolutely. Exactly. And, part of this chasing joy, part of this trying to find that joy is sometimes just looking for it in the smallest ways. And so we wanted to end this session just with that reminder of those little bits of joy, those little tiny spaces of things that bring us joy. And for us, we think it's our pets, but also when our pets do silly things. And so we wanted to share these photos as just that kind of prompt, that reminder of seeking those little moments just as much.
It's the little things that make you smile, isn't it? So this is my little doggo. The cat's yours. I've got 2 cats too, so sorry to my cats, but this is my little doggo, Wilbur. And when it was dead hot the other day, and actually it was a bit of a glum day because it was really hot and sweaty, and we were both feeling a bit over the heat, but I made him some doggy safe frozen yogurt, and you can see he's got a little yogurty mustache there. He really loved it, and that definitely made me smile.
I love that. And I mean, yeah, I think many of us might agree that our pets or being around animals can sometimes just bring that joy anyway. But Tipsy has this incredible ability to always be caught with her tongue out on camera. And so I just thought this was such a good photo to go back to. She just looks so silly, but it's just a great one to go back to when we need that bit of joy as well. So thank you so much for joining us. And well done for making it through all of those different ideas. Hopefully, one of them has sparked an interest for you, or you've already gone away and done something, and maybe you've come back to look through it again. But whatever it is, we really hope that something there has started to inspire you to pick something up, or to find something different, or to challenge a mindset a little bit and begin to take a step to just doing something in some way. And of course, like Kate mentioned, if sometimes that's just the first step, and actually there's other steps after that. And so we also want to remind you that actually, if this is something bigger, if this is something heavier, then actually that's the first step that helps us seek that support, that gives us the courage or gives us the ability and the time and the energy to seek some of that support. And we'd really encourage that as well, of course. But as well, you can always check out our other live streams that we have at Headstrong and just see what else we've talked about, all the other emotions and other situations that we've mentioned. Thank you all so much. Kate, any final words for us?
No, well, let's just remember, like, low moods are a bit rubbish, but we all have them. They are part of life. And it's easy to feel like if we're going to achieve like emotional high, what we want to do is never have those rubbish emotions. But actually, that's not what it is to be human. So actually what it's about is thinking, do I feel like I know what to do in those moments when I feel low? Can I help myself feel better? Are there people that I can reach out to? Are there things that I can do? But it all takes practice. So have fun practicing, be creative, try stuff out. Don't worry about the stuff that doesn't work. But when you find something that does, make a note, because those things, they're your anchor things that are going to get you through life's tough times.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, folks, and take care. We'll see you again.